Terry McLaurin is officially holding out, and no matter how the team spins it, this is the first real crisis of the Adam Peters era. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, and right here with you 5 days a week. You can also find me writing about the Commanders on Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com, and you can throw me a follow on X if you'd like to at DHarrison82. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view, and a special thank you goes out to all the everydayers who come through for every single episode. If you haven't already, please make sure you are subscribed for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's episode. If it's your first time here, thanks for coming through. Hopefully you like what you hear and you come back for more. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to talk about Brandon Coleman's crucial transition inside, the star power of Von Miller and Deebo Samuel. But first, it's all going to start off with Terry McLaurin's holdout officially beginning on Tuesday and the countdown to contract resolution. All of that's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com/LockedOnNFL for 50% off your first year. Terry McLaurin did not show up by the deadline Tuesday for veterans to show up and participate in training camp, and that silence speaks louder than anything Adam Peters told us Tuesday morning about the negotiations and the ongoing situation with Terry McLaurin. So here are the basic facts of the situation going on with Terry McLaurin. Did not report for his mandatory conditioning test on Tuesday, which means he's officially beginning his holdout. He's the only player on the Washington Commanders roster that is not present for training camp. So all rookies, all other vets are present. They did what they're supposed to do. The holdout, as you probably know by now, related to his desire for a new contract. And it could be either an extension, it could be a total new contract that even reworks the current year. There are several options involved there, but the common terminology being used is extension, which means money added on to his contract, which expires after the 2025 NFL season. So one of the questions I've been getting from a lot of people is, how much should we panic now, right? Because in the beginning of the offseason, when this whole thing started, I was telling you guys, I think we're good. I don't have any worries that they're going to get a deal done. Feel pretty confident in that. Adam Peters has said publicly, other people, Dan Quinn, Lance Newmark said publicly that Terry McLaurin is an important part of the franchise, the organization. Everybody understands his value. So really didn't see a problem coming. Once he didn't participate in OTAs, mandatory minicamp, still no panic there, right? So, okay, pretty confident things are going to go pretty well. And I even remember saying like around July 15th is probably the moment, right? People are kind of breaking, going on little mini vacations, things like that. And this team likes to do things the right way. So you're not going to bring Terry in to sign a contract with nobody in the building. So around July 15th, around July 15th, Terry McLaurin decided to go public with his frustration, his feelings of disrespect. That changed things a little bit. I'm still confident that I think Terry McLaurin plays for the Burgundy and Gold this year, but obviously there's some tension here and there's some hurt feelings and there's some separation between the two sides and all these things. So with him holding out of training camp, it's a little bit of a different page to this story. Right now, my meter's probably at about a 6 out of 10 right now. And that's certainly up from where it was before because this is a holdout. It's not a hold in. If it was a hold in, I'd feel like, okay, they're probably pretty close. Like Terry wants to be nearby if they got to go put, pen to paper and do all these things. But a holdout really kind of signals that you're not really close, at least close enough to have some like goodwill here for Terry and the team. And this, like I said, is the first real crisis, if you want to call it that. And crisis might even be a little bit overblown, but this is the real first true conflict that this team has had to go through with Adam Peters at the controls of the franchise. So that's really going to be, this is going to be your first kind of sample of how Adam Peters is going to be as a general manager. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. It's not higher than 6 because it's just day one of training camp tomorrow. It's not, we're still not in the point where like Terry is missing critically important parts of the install and all these things. Like these guys are installing things that Terry probably already knows and all this stuff. So I'm not really worried about that. So you just still have some time, I think, until you start to get worried about that specifically. I think you're talking early August, right? So where's the disconnect here? So the disconnect obviously is in the contract, right? Currently, Terry McLaurin's contract gives him around $23 million annual average value, which has been surpassed by the top of the wide receiver market, which every contract eventually gets surpassed. You understand that. But right now, you've got deals in the wide receiver market exceeding $30 million per year, and you even have a number 2 receiver for one NFL team, the Cincinnati Bengals, making more than Terry is making as the number 1 receiver, and that certainly is part of what has kind of sparked this whole thing. Now, this action and Adam Peters' words, I don't want to say they don't jive, right? Because you could certainly be having some good conversations, right? Adam Peters told us on Tuesday morning that they were having some good conversations, continue to have some good conversations. And I think the encouraging thing here is AP saying very specifically, like, it's everybody's intent to get this deal done. Like, that's the intent, is to get this deal done. So there's not like a we'll wait and see, or, he's got to do this, or he's got, like, the intent is to get the contract done, and there's good conversations. But again, like I said, with the holdout, you just kind of have the feeling like it's not good enough, or maybe they're good conversations, but Terry's like, hey guys, like, we should have been having these good conversations a month ago. So it's too little too late. I'm not coming until we get this thing done. You should have opened up the door to these conversations sooner. That's always certainly a possibility. So how far apart are they? Well, we don't have hard numbers, official numbers for what Terry is asking for, what the team is offering. You assume, with Adam Peters publicly saying we're trying to get this deal done, that they probably made an offer, but we don't actually know for sure what those offers are. The speculation that we can give, the best speculation we can give, and I want to make 100% sure everybody understands it's speculation, is they're probably $2 to $3 million apart on the annual average value. It's the guarantees typically that are far apart, like maybe $10 to $15 million range, right? And here's the analytical speculation behind how we got to that number, right? It's basically an educated inference, which is the adult way of saying educated guess, right? So it's an educated guess, but it's based on history, right? It's based on history and what is most likely to cause tension in these types of conversations, right? So you look at the precedent for contract negotiations, and in almost every modern NFL contract dispute, you go back to A.J. Brown, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, and Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel are 2 contract disputes that Adam Peters was at least on the staff as part of those conflicts, right? The final hurdle is rarely annual average value. Usually, the hurdle is guaranteed money and just terms of the overall contract structure. So I think that's probably where we're at with the Washington Commanders, because again, Adam Peters said on Tuesday, quote, we're having some good conversations, end quote. If you're $10 million away on the annual average value, you're probably not having good conversations, right? You're going to say, yeah, we're talking, we're working, we're trying to come to it, but to have, we're having good conversations typically probably means you're probably fairly close on the annual average value. You're just not close on the guarantees, or at least close enough on the guarantees. A full holdout by a guy who prides himself on being a team leader, being a good soldier, being the guy who, always has a smile on his face, even in the toughest moments, like that adds a little bit to this. Like Terry, like to kind of put it in the way, like Terry's not really the guy you would expect to do this. So the fact that he's doing it again kind of signifies that there's probably a pretty decent gap between where the Commanders are guarantee wise and where Terry McLaurin is guarantee wise. But then again, just trying to read between the lines with AP saying there's good conversations means they probably have the total number and the average annual value of the contract fairly close, if not set. It's now we're talking what's guaranteed, what's incentives, what's signing bonus, what's workout bonus, what's this, what's that, right? So if you're using realistic expectations on this, while there's no numbers being reported, the sticking point of these deals usually has to do with guarantees. And I always kind of go back to Le'Veon Bell leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then years later kind of reflecting and saying, there was $2 million that I wanted guaranteed. They didn't want to guarantee the $2 million. They wouldn't budge. I wouldn't budge. I ended up leaving. He ended up sitting out a whole season, going to the New York Jets, and then he basically just fell apart from there, right? Just was never the same. And looking back on it, he wishes he would have just taken the deal, $2 million less than guaranteed, kind of bet on yourself type of deal. Go out there, earn that money, earn that $2 million, right? Because it's not like if it's not guaranteed, it's not earnable. It's certainly earnable. I think that's kind of where Terry maybe is feeling the strain of like not being valued. He's like, I think I deserve you being willing to guarantee more of the contract instead of you making me go chase the carrot. Just give me the carrot and trust that I'm going to do good by that, right? So some of the ripple effects here. Obviously, you have Jaden Daniels, the relationship between the quarterback and receiver, very important. I'm not super concerned about it right now. Again, like I said, because that relationship was super strong. Jaden is not going to be bothered by this. He's not going to go out there and be like, well, I'm not going to throw Terry the ball as much because he held out for a little bit. That's not going to happen. Locker room effect, a team captain. Obviously, he's got some influence, but as far as like creating dissent, like I don't think that's going to be a problem. There's enough leaders in this locker room that missing Terry, while you would love to have him out there, it's not going to like tear the locker room apart. And then preparation. I think joint practice. If Terry isn't in New England for the August 6th joint practice, that's when I will get worried. Like that's when like my panic meter is probably gonna hit like an 8. You know what I mean? If we don't have a trade request by then that's probably where my panic meter personally would probably hit about an 8. And then after that, like following, once he starts missing some preseason games and some joint practices, then you start getting worried about the ramp up to the season and the entire situation. So that's kind of where we are with Terry McLaurin right now. Captain, holding out, a veteran that everyone is eager to see out there. But we're going to move on from contract drama to star power that is going to headline training camp starting Wednesday. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by Monarch Money. Have you ever wished that your money, managing your money, felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. And let's be honest, when something as important as Terry McLaurin's contract is in question, it's a reminder of how critical financial control really is. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app, though. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. Personally, I didn't realize how much I was letting get away in random subscriptions until I got onto Monarch. That clarity helped me clean up my budget, stay focused on bigger goals, just like the Commanders need to stay focused on securing their most reliable weapon. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Rougiette. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette is a 3-in-1 formula that dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, just 15 minutes. I love that it's completely online. Rougiette connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. So head to rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. With training camp about to open, all eyes are on two proven stars, Von Miller, Deebo Samuel, who could bring instant impact and veteran energy to a roster in transition. So I've been teasing for a couple days now that we're going to do our 3 players to watch. We're going to put a lens on 3 specific players to watch a training camp. Obviously, we're going to watch more than just 3 guys, but I wanted to get 3 specific guys talked about, and just news keeps coming. Things keep happening, and we had to push this down. But you know what, man? Training camp is literally about 12 hours away at the time that I'm recording this. We got to get this covered because it's an important conversation. So we're going to start with Von Miller, the new outside linebacker, officially signed on Monday, officially part of the team. It was a calculated move, right? Adam Peters talked to us on Tuesday. He said, quote, "We saved some money aside really in order to do this and find the best guy out there," end quote. And it wasn't necessarily concerned to get him into OTAs, get him into the mandatory minicamp, him or any other veteran edge rusher. You're talking about guys like Von Miller who have a long history in the NFL. They know how to take care of their body. They know how to prepare. So just like Laramie Tunsil, you're not worried about them being there right away. You're not worried about them getting a full run up in OTAs or anything crazy like that, because these guys know what they're doing. They know how to get their bodies ready. So Von Miller not being there at OTAs, not being there at mandatory minicamp, not a problem. In fact, we talk about Laramie Tunsil, like if the team could do it without looking like a certain kind of way, they probably would just excuse him from mandatory minicamp if they absolutely could. But, teams are never going to give away the opportunity to have their guys in-house, right? So it's not going to happen. But you get the point. So Von Miller, the on-field availability, the team believing he can be a high-impact player, not just a mentor. I think that's really, really kind of important. And I like that at least the coverage that I've seen, I know the coverage that I've provided has been focused on Von Miller's playability, right? We've certainly talked about the mentorship, talked about his ability as a teammate, what he could be in the locker room, how he could help train younger guys and get them better at, taking care of their bodies, et cetera, and how that could have echoing results throughout the years for Washington football. Sure. But we start the conversation with third down pass situations, right? 6 sacks last year, second year removed from an ACL injury and all those things. That's where we start the conversation. And I'm glad we did, because AP really kind of wanted to hammer that home. Like, he remembered, he recalled when Bobby Wagner came in, a lot of us, what we talk about, coach on the field, coach in the locker room, all these things. And that's really the most thing that we talked about. Zach Ertz came in, same thing. That's really the biggest thing that we all talked about. What ended up happening? They weren't just coaches on the field. They weren't just leaders in the locker room. They were ballers. Like, those guys balled out. So they expect Von Miller to be the same. Now, I don't think Von Miller is going to get the volume, right, that a guy like Bobby Wagner gets, certainly, or Zach Ertz gets. But in the volume that he does get, being an impactful player comes first. And I go back to, if you're an everydayer, you remember yesterday's episode, or the last episode before this one, I should say, we talked about Von Miller. We talked about his introductory press conference with Buffalo Bills. I went back and I watched it, and he said in that press conference, the thing I do best is get after the quarterback. The thing I do second best is help my teammates. So that's what the Commanders have him here to do, is get after the quarterback and then help his teammates. So you want to see a little bit of that at training camp, right? We see him getting off the line quick, see him moving fast. Again, it's his very first practice on Wednesday. How much we're going to see that right off the bat, I don't know. But once we get to see him kind of get ramped up, we want to see that. But while he's not doing necessarily full reps and full speed and all that stuff, how is he talking with guys like Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Jacob Martin, who's new to this team as well, Frankie Luvu, who could certainly pull something from a guy like Von Miller's experience and resume. So all those types of things. You want to see a little bit of all that kind of stuff. Adam Peters promised us that you're going to see a good version of Von Miller. I watched a little bit of tape on Von. He's obviously watched more, I'm sure. He said, quote, when you turn on the tape from last year, it was like shocked to see how good he still was and how well he got off the ball. And that getting off the ball, obviously incredibly important on the outside, and something that he's certainly been praised for. And then, that locker room impact. You do have to talk about that. AP mentioning how people are calling him from around the stops that he's had in the NFL. Von has telling me, you guys got the perfect guy. You guys got a great dude for your locker room. So certainly looking forward to that as well. Speaking of Deebo Samuel, I don't think I ever would have predicted the word joy being the first word that comes to mind when you talk about Deebo Samuel, but I don't know Deebo behind closed doors in the meeting rooms, right? All those things. But both GM Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn, both of them use that word, joy. Dan Quinn specifically, quote, the word I think of for him, for Deebo, I think of joy. He has it. You see it on the practice field. You see it in the meeting rooms. There's an energy that brings to our team that is, and you feel it, end quote. And, you certainly see it on the practice field. Like, Deebo loves playing ball. He loves the sport. He loves the game. He loves getting ready with his teammates. And there's a belief that this new scheme, this change of scenery that Deebo is getting by coming to the Washington Commanders has revitalized him a little bit, has re-energized him, and it's made him a better impact on his teammates. Anna Peters said, quote, he seems like he's really revitalized and he's been an awesome teammate, end quote. And again, been in shape. Look, I know there's videos going around and people are like, he looks thick. He looks fat. He looks this. He looks that. Trust me. 2 eyes on him, 3-dimensional on the practice field. I promise you, there's not a beat reporter I know that is at every practice doing this, or a television reporter that's at every practice that I know that thinks that he is out of shape, overweight, any of that stuff. We haven't seen him since OTAs, right? But so that's different tomorrow. I will tell you. Trust me, I will tell you. If Deebo Samuel shows up training camp on Wednesday out of shape, I will tell you. But I don't think we're going to have that conversation. I think we're going to be all right. So on the physical adjustment to his body, Adam Peters said, quote, he's taken that challenge on and really worked on, having great wind, being able to play over and over and over again, end quote. And it's shown certainly on the practice field. But of course, we can't just have new faces that have star names, right? Dan Quinn talked about multiple second-year players that could take a big leap this year. One of them, I think, is incredibly important and is set up for success, perhaps more than anybody else. We'll get into that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy, a new sponsor. Super excited to bring them on board. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all of the overreactions. This year, myself and Locked On Commanders, we're playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, Whether you're a first timer or a veteran making your millionth league, I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years and love how smooth the draft day experience is. The platform is fast, it's easy to navigate, and the mobile app makes it super simple to manage my roster, even while I'm tracking training camp updates. Super user friendly. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. So stay tuned to get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. From the star power on the outside to the battles in the trenches, let's shift the spotlight to second-year lineman Brandon Coleman in the interior offensive line. So Brandon Coleman entering his second season. Dan Quinn has talked multiple times about this is the year that we usually see the biggest leap, year 1 to year 2, because they have athletic ability, raw athletic ability. Now they get the experience, and you start to see the skills really match up with the speed of the game and with the level of competition. So if a guy like Brandon Coleman can take that step, that first to second year big step, then the team is really going to benefit from it. And they've really let him stay in that left guard position all spring because that's where they want him to lock in and focus. That's what Dan Quinn told us on Tuesday. So the challenge here, right, is going to be communication. That's the primary hurdle, but he's in an ideal environment. Dan Quinn said, quote, well, the first thing is communication, playing next to somebody. And so with Laramie and Tyler Biadasz and the voices in the calls, making sure those happen, end quote. Listen, I think that right there just nailed it. He's playing between Laramie Tunsil and Tyler Biadasz. You've got the center who literally sets the protection right in your ear hole on your right side. On your left side, you got a veteran 5-time Pro Bowl tackle telling you, hey, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. Like Brandon Coleman is going to have so much instruction, so much direction, so much communication. Like there might not be a better situation for a second-year offensive lineman to try to show that growth, take that step as an NFL sophomore and really, really thrive. So I'm really excited for what Brandon Coleman is walking into. I think it's a great situation. And of course, he's already impressed them. DQ said, quote, I was pleased to see all that development take place for him. Talking about Brandon Coleman, end quote. Yeah, and I think his successful transition to guard, it's incredibly important because you want to get that offensive line solidified, right? Josh Carnley Jr. comes in as a rookie right tackle and potentially could move to left tackle in a couple, 2-3 years, depending on Laramie's status. Brandon Coleman, a young guard. Tyler Biadasz, not super young, but young enough to be a center for a while. Sam Cosmi under contract for a few more years. Like you really kind of start to see the potential here for an offensive line that gets built in front of Jaden Daniels in this running game that can really move some earth. And I think that Brandon Coleman is a big piece of it this season if he can be successful. So whether it's Terry McLaurin's contract, veteran leadership, or offensive line shakeups, training camp is already getting a little bit hectic and a whole lot of fun. And we haven't even gotten started yet. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, it is time for football. No more speculation. Probably a little bit of speculation right here and there, but real observations, real life on the field practice observations about your Washington Commanders in 2025. It's going to be a lot of fun. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you can text them directly to me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. The Commanders are charging into training camp on Wednesday with a bold win now mindset, but how does the rest of the league view their top end talent? The brand new Locked On NFL Top 100 has the answer. Find out where Jaden Daniels lands after just one NFL season, fueling belief in Washington's aggressive vision and why Terry McLaurin's elite ranking only adds more pressure to resolve his contract situation. Hear the full Top 100 breakdown on Locked On Sports today, available now on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. To the everydayers, I see you every day. I appreciate you every day, and I thank you today. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.